Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2301. Today we're going racing, so buckle up and be prepared to be inspired.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm in Hershey, Pennsylvania, which is a cool place to be with somebody who's into cars because we all know about Hershey and the swap meets and the fall events they have. My special guest today is named Cord Kisthardt. Very challenging last name. I'm getting better at it. Kisthardt. Cord, welcome to Cars Yeah. Do you have it in gear, and are you ready to release the clutch?
Oh, I'm ready.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, for sure. Hopefully I didn't butcher that name too badly. Now, before I give you an introduction and we talk about the racing world that you're having fun in, what's one little thing that people don't know about you, Cord?
Most people don't know that I actually took a break from racing for 4 years and I shot competitively, sporting clays and track.
How fun.
So Jackie Stewart, the Formula One world champion, he actually was a skeet shooter prior to going into motorsports. And one day he was up at the Glen and we were racing all the time and getting burnt out by racing. And he actually suggested trying, the shotgun sports. And we had a blast doing it. So we took 4 years off of racing and just kind of reset and shot a lot. But yeah, most people don't actually realize that I had that 4-year period in my life that we didn't race.
We had a blast. Nicely done, my friend. That was pretty good.
Yep.
Fun. Yeah, when I moved up here 29 years ago, my next door neighbor has he likes to collect old English shotguns, some really nice stuff. I mean, it's just works of art, really. And he took me to the range and I fell in love with it. So I bought some shotguns, got my son into it, and I haven't done it in a long time. I need to do it some more. We go to the range and shoot, but I haven't been in doing that. I liked 5-stand. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah, yep. 5-stand was great. They had feed hask in the sporting clays, which is where you had to hold the butt of the shotgun down 9 inches, and then you couldn't raise it until you saw the claybird. But we shot sporting clays with the NSCA for 2 years, and I was All-American 2 times for that. And then for trap, which was ATA, I was an All-American 3 times for that, which is the top 30 in the country.
Wow. Well, I got to get back to Hershey and have you give me some lessons because I never came close to that kind of level of talent. But it's a really fun thing to do. I really enjoy it, and I should really get back into it. My neighbor, again, the same guy, he's got a ranch out east, but it's a long drive, and we could go out there and shoot, but it's like a 5-hour drive. I've got a gun range that's 5 minutes from my house, so that's a little bit more convenient. Yeah, very good.
Good, too, because, it keeps your hand-eye coordination. It's kind of, you're not really losing all that much by shooting. It doesn't, hurt anything. Same thing as if you play tennis or, whatever. It's all about hand-eye coordination, especially with the racing. So.
Very cool. Well, let me introduce you here. Cord Kisthardt is a racer who has been immersed in the automotive world throughout his life. His racing career includes many types of motorsports, including quarter midgets, micro sprints, sprint cars, and sports cars. And today, he's racing Corvettes in the SCCA, Hoosier, Tire, Super Tour, SVRA, HSR, and VRG. And we'll learn about him getting into a little vintage racing here as well. Cord grew up around the vintage cars, particularly Ferraris, and continues to be involved in automotive related activities, and he likes to shoot, so that's pretty cool too. We'll be back in just a moment, but first a word from our sponsors, so give them a little listen. They keep the fuel in the tanks, and we'll be right back. Years ago, when it was time to renew my collector car insurance policy, my carrier's rates went up. Way up, but my usage was the same and I never made a claim. I didn't even have a ticket. So what's with that? So I turned to American Collectors Insurance. Has your collector car insurance recently raised your rates for no good reason? Tired of paying an annual membership fee? Then it's time to look around and call American Collectors Insurance. I shopped around, I asked friends for recommendations, and found a winner that I can trust. And boy, I'm glad I did. I saved hundreds of dollars every year and slept better at night knowing my baby was properly insured. American Collectors Insurance have been protecting vehicles since 1976. They provided me with an agreed value insurance policy backed by their history of taking great care of their clients. What could be better than that? So give them a call and ask for a quote today. 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224 9324 and protect the ones you love like I did with American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. For several years now, you've heard me talk about Linkage Magazine. I've been a subscriber since the start. Their talented and creative team brings you a spectacular publication and website that shares the automotive passion from a worldwide perspective. Linkage is about driving, restoring, collecting, and first-hand experience at collector car auctions and more. They bring you real-world values plus rational, experienced opinions on the current markets. They cover the automotive world and the people who share our passions. And Linkage Magazine has grown, mailing you 6 issues annually. Join me on this journey with Linkage. They're geared for the automotive life. You can subscribe at linkagemag.com. Want to hear something crazy? Veterans work on billions of dollars of vehicles, planes, and engines while deployed, but they can't touch our car until they've obtained a certification and training requirements for employment back here at home. That's crazy. Dick Force Foundation Military Transition Fund provides scholarships and grants so our veterans can transition to great careers following their service for this great country. Support Tech Force, a charity of choice here at Cars Yeah, and its workforce development efforts for our veterans by donating at techforce.org today. So, Cord, let's talk a little bit about this racing passion you have and maybe go back in time because it sounds like this has been a big part of your life since you were little, perhaps. Was it your parents or a family member that got you into cars?
Yes, it was my father, actually. He was involved in kart back in the 80s. Once I was born, it was pretty much, I was born to race, right? I always was in a car. Not a blood uncle, but Oscar Kowaleski was big with Kid Racer and getting kids involved in motorsports. So Uncle Oscar had me in a car in a Kid Racer, I should say, when I was 1.5. Did that until I was 4.
Well, wait a minute. Did you say 1.5?
Yeah, I have a picture. The first time I ever drove one in a race was 1.5. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Now, I've had some racers on the show. In fact, my youngest guest, I think, was 12, and he raced go-karts and wanted to get into the next level kind of progression. But You hold a record here on Cars Yeah. 1.5. I mean, yeah. I'm thinking my grandson was just here. He's 1.5, and I have a little pedal car for him. I mean, his feet don't even reach the pedal. So what the heck were you sitting in?
So a Kid Racer, I don't know if you've ever seen one, but it's a little electric car that's based off of, it's basically a shrunken down, Indy car from back in the early 2000s. And it's electric power. It has 2 speeds and you sit on top of the batteries. So that's what I grew up learning how to drive. Whether it be, Uncle Oscar used to go around to different tracks and it was for, drivers' kids to occupy them while their parents raced. But, when we weren't doing that, it was in my parents' driveway, just, every day. I would watch Le Mans with Steve McQueen and then I'd go out and, pull around in the driveway. But
wow. Well, you got a record here then. That is pretty amazing. So your uncle got you into cars, you started driving and so forth. And tell me a little bit about the progression through the different kinds of cars that you raced.
Yeah, so we started with, like I say, Kid Racer. I don't really say that was racing because it wasn't really sanctioned but with quarter midgets, we went with QMA, which was a USAC sanctioning body. And we had an option when I was 4, what we wanted to do. So we could have went karting path or we could go, quarter midgets. And we ultimately decided quarter midgets because, one, the safety aspect with having a cage all around you, actual seatbelts, but additionally, you have a suspension in a quarter midget. So setting up the car, I would learn a lot more about setup in the quarter midget than I would with the weight distribution in the cart. So we did quarter midget racing from 4 to 9. We had a new chassis every single year. Quarter midgets you can run on dirt and on asphalt. We did a little bit of pavement racing, but not that much. Primarily it was on dirt, which was great for, again, setup, car control. Exactly. And then when I turned 9, we got a micro sprint, which originally was a 250cc. You're technically supposed to be 16 to race them, but we found a track in Delaware, which was like 5 hours away, that let me race and just, didn't care about my age. And then wound up finally when I was 12 coming to PA because central Pennsylvania is big for dirt racing. So did micros, sprint cars. and then took the break for, shooting for the 4 years, which was it was like my mid high school into early college. And then when I got out of college, I said I wanted to go sports car racing because, that was really where my passion always was. I'm a huge fan of Le Mans. Same thing with like 24 Hours Daytona. Anything that's an endurance race that has, prototypes and sports cars, like that's what I always wanted to do, is road racing. So we got a Corvette and decided that we were going to go race with SCCA. Actually, I lied. First, we started racing with EMRA, which is actually the oldest road racing sanctioning body in the United States. Won 2 national championships with EMRA. And then we decided to go to SCCA with the Hoosier Tire Super Tour. Between that and just hopping in other cars, like that's kind of where I've been the past couple of years. But that was ultimately like my end goal was always getting to sports cars somehow. It all lined up. Thankfully, my dad was good with letting me actually do that. And it's not just with SCCA. We ran SVRA, HSR. We're planning on doing some VRG stuff this year as well. They actually, for HSR, they have a 6-hour at Watkins Glen, which is going to be their inaugural 6-hour at the Glen for like the historics. So the car that we just bought ran the 24 Hours Daytona, the 12 Sebring, and 6 at the Glen back in the mid 70s. So I think it would be cool to go with HSR to those tracks and do, the historic, enduros with the car.
Oh, yeah.
Just kind of get back with it. But also trying not to lose sight of, we have a new T1 Corvette that I don't want to stop racing either. So it's trying to do a balancing act with that. And then I tested a bunch of Ferrari Challenge cars as well. So like from spring to fall, it's packed with racing.
Yeah, you just don't know how to have fun, do you?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yesterday's guest on the show was Steve Bartolotti, who's the general manager of FAF Motorsports. And of course, their team just came off a nice win at the Sebring of 12 hours. They pulled a rabbit out of their hat there with, these endurance races. I love endurance racing because there's all this ideas of how you're going to win. And then everything changes every minute. So
goes out the door. Yep. Yeah. Well, they won the championship for IMSA for the GTD. I think it was last year. It might have been the year prior, but I believe it was last year. That car is always competitive. That's a really good team.
They are. And I love the paint scheme they put on that car.
Yeah,
the plaid was just really fantastic. This racing thing that you're doing then, what is your favorite aspect of racing? Because especially when you add in endurance racing, there's an entirely different thought process versus oval racing or any of the other racing you've done. And sports car racing is cool because to me, it's the closest thing to what those of us mere mortals can drive on the streets. And then something, I know they're very different, but you feel like you're kind of in the same car.
It looks the way, right?
It looks kind of the same. Yeah, a little bit. I've never been fortunate enough to drive a car like that.
It's not the same, but it's at least like visually there. I would say, that's actually a really good question. The competitive nature in me says that the competition and, being quicker or knowing that I can do something a little bit faster than somebody else or a little bit better is what probably my favorite part. But additionally, like I'm very lucky to be able to drive a lot of different kind of cars. So what's unique about every single thing, right? So like a 488 GT3 is a lot easier to drive than an old 355 Challenge car with a gated shifter, right? Same thing with like the T1 car is going to be a lot easier to drive than the old IMSA Camel GT Corvette that has no ABS, no TC, bias ply tires. You don't have AP racing, 6-piston calipers up front. It's just being able to hop out and get into a car and know that you can push it to its limit and still be safe, I think is something that, I definitely like and enjoy. And obviously the opportunities to hop in and get to drive some of these cars and experience that for myself is definitely, one of my favorite parts about racing to this day.
For sure. If I could be your benefactor and put you in any race car, what would it be?
Current or?
Current racing, yeah.
Current, it'd be a 296 GT3. I would love to run the IMSA series with, the new Ferrari GT3 car, but that's always been a goal of mine, especially with, 24 Hours Daytona, 12 Sebring. They have the Michelin Endurance Cup. Like, I think that's a a very cool championship to itself. And obviously being on the East Coast, like the 6 hours of the Glen being, Watkins Glen for all intents and purposes is my home track. So being able to go up there and like, if I could run the 6 hours, that would be, phenomenal.
Yeah, I think so. Nice choice there. Yeah, I like to ask people about driving inspirations. A bit of a pun there, but it really is more about influential people, mentors in your life, people that have really helped you along the way. Is there somebody that stands out for you?
I would say, there's probably two people, right? So one being my father. I look up to my dad very much. We even talk about the office. Like my office is very reflective of my father's office that I always aspired to be like. And I would say a lot of things that I'm a very goal-oriented person, and a lot of that comes from learning that from my dad. And a lot of goals that I have are goals that he had accomplished. I just try and do them a little bit quicker in life. And then, secondly, obviously with Oscar Kowaleski, he always was just there for me and provided me all kinds of advice, especially about like just doing what was best for you, whether that affected anybody else or made anybody else happy, and actually going after what you wanted, right? Because he always said, there's always three types of people: people that watch things happen, people that wonder what happened, and people that make things happen, which is very accurate. But he always, wanted me to be the person that made the things happen. So, and that's kind of something that I definitely lived my life by, even though I used to hate when he said that. But it's a good quote. Now as I'm getting older, I'm like, wow, that's very accurate statement.
Now you understand it. I'll tell you, listeners, I'm sitting here with Cord, and he's sitting in a room that is just looks a little bit like a museum almost. I mean, the beautiful wood bookcases, the helmets, the car models, the books and everything. Yeah, he's sitting in an environment that is just spectacular, that instills kind of old world with new world and racing and cars. So, beautiful, beautiful place you have. Challenges, the challenge question I ask everybody is a little bit silly for race car drivers because there are so many challenges trying to go down this path. I mean, there's so many things blocking your way. But is there one that stands out that you encountered that, looking back, although it was difficult, taught you a really valuable lesson?
Yeah, we obviously have bad seasons, right? Like that's the way that it works. And I would say, even though it was pretty recent, 2021, we decided that we were going to start working on our own car and doing all of the service in-house at our shop. And it seemed like nothing went right that year. Even though we were doing everything good, we broke gearbox the first race of the year, snapped an input shaft the next race, tore up a torque tube and drive shaft. And then we had a steering rack go. Like it just, the whole year was
everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was one of those deals where it was definitely difficult because it seemed like every race I'd have a great quali lap and then it would come to the race and we'd have to retire the car, but just not giving up. And that sounds corny, but we had a phenomenal race up at the Glen towards the end of the year. And then 2022, nothing happened to the car, thankfully. So it was one of those deals where it's just, you work through it and there's not much you can do about it other than just make sure that everything's right before you get to the track, and hopefully nothing happens, but it's kind of out of your control with random failures like that, and just not beating yourself up on something that isn't in your control, right? It would be very easy to be like, well, this happened, that happened, we should just give up on the season or get a new car or do whatever. But having the same car and just really spending the time going through it and making sure that everything was good for the future races. We had stuff like that, in sprint cars, engines last 10 races, and then you have to rebuild them. So you go through a lot of engines. I remember the one season I blew up 19 engines in a year. And it was one of those deals where it was getting to the point where Dad was sitting me down being like, we blow another engine. I don't know if we're doing any more races this year. But since I was a lot younger, I don't think that necessarily stuck as much with me as the 2021 season. And especially doing the work ourselves. Like that was really the first year we were like, we're doing everything in-house. We're not sending it out. We're not doing anything. Like this is just going to be, us in the shop, and doesn't matter how long it takes. We're going to fix the car. So
Yeah, understand that little bit of vintage racing I did. I had one weekend at the old Sears Point and was racing 2 cars and blew up 2 engines. And yeah, I came back from that. I told my wife, I said, about the trip to Hawaii we're supposed to be taking. We may not be doing that. And she just went, excuse me? So yeah, it's expensive. And you get to the level you're at, it's an entirely different world. I mean, my little level was not that much, but made a big impact. And yeah, it's tough. You know, you mentioned the word never give up, and I was wondering when you were going to say that in our talk, because virtually every racer out of probably 400 plus racers I've interviewed now, those words come up. Those immortal words, never ever give up, Winston Churchill. And you just can't, because it's just constant. It's like sports. You know, what is sports? But you think about great athletes who keep having tough times, defeats, injuries, and you just can't give up, because then you don't become great. So glad you stuck to it there. You know, I'd like to talk a little bit about bucket lists, and you have talked a little bit about some of it, but what does your racing season look like this year? What are you going to be doing?
So we're starting off doing a bunch of testing in April here, you know, coming up in a couple of days. Especially, like I said, we got a new vintage race car, which was a X-Camel GT Corvette. I don't have any seat time in it, so we're really going to be testing a lot. In addition to that, I'm going up to the Glen testing in some Ferrari Challenge cars. And then we're getting into the race season start May. We opted to not run the SCCA majors this year because the T1 car, they have BOP and it's not really working out well for Corvettes. So we decided we were just going to stick with, you know, vintage racing and then do the Hoosier Tire Super Tour as well. The different sanctioning bodies, like I said, I want to run, we're going to start off with VRG at the Jefferson 500, and then I want to run HSR, the 6 hours of the Glen, and then additionally with HSR, I want to run the Classic 24 again, and then SVRA as well. We're going to run the T1 car with SVRA just because the car was competitive and we had a great weekend last year doing it, so might as well have another, you know, great couple weekends. If you're going to throw away your money, you might as well have a smile on your face.
You're not throwing away money. You're just enjoying life. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, who wants to die with a whole bunch of money in the bank?
Yeah.
You got to have fun. So I think that's tremendous. I've got to ask you this question, being a young person and then adding the complexities of racing, about the EV world. I wonder what your impressions are about the future of racing when it comes to electric vehicles. What are your thoughts?
So I'm not a huge proponent of EVs. I think at this moment, I'm not saying that in the future they don't have a place, but, you know, we were talking about Paul Hershey started this, and I went to the auction. It's only about 2 miles away from our house. Went down to the auction maybe 5 years ago, and they had an electric vehicle from, I think it was 1897, I want to say.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy to think about how long they've been trying to work electric vehicles. You know, you look at Formula E, and do you think electric has a place in motorsports? You'd be foolish to say that it doesn't. I don't know if it's going to gain the kind of traction that obviously having, you know, a huge V8 rumbling, you know, down the track, where you have screaming V12 or, you know, one of the Porsche flat sixes coming. Regardless, I think it does have a place in motorsports. I think the key of contemporary motorsports is trying to advance and see, you know, what technologically you can do for the future. And you even see it with the GTP cars in IMSA now. You know, they have the electric motors when they're coming down pit lane and exiting pit lane.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that's here to stay. It's not something that I'm necessarily very passionate about, but you kind of have to adapt with the times. And, you know, that seems to be the way that motorsports is going. I will say for vintage racing, definitely not trying to do anything EV in the future, but we'll see what happens. It seems, you know, Formula E through all the iterations as well, like they've gained quite a following, and they have tons of phenomenal drivers that go to race Formula E. So I think racers are racers, and they're going to get in a car and race, whether it's electric or gas powered.
So let's talk about a special vehicle in your life. Now, this could be a street car, or maybe it's a race car that the first time you got in, you went, wow, I'm here. This is pretty darn cool. Is there one car that stands out that you can talk about?
From a coolness perspective, I really want to say that the 488 GT3 was the coolest thing I've ever been in, but I honestly think that it would get beaten out. So last year I was lucky enough to go out in one of our friends has a 365 GT BB which is a Berlinetta Boxer.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the NART car, number 111, it ran Le Mans, it ran Sebring, ran, all the big races. It was cool to get in something that was, so analog. It's almost undescribable, like the power that it had and just the sounds that it made. You don't get that out of a modern car. And obviously being up at the Glen with the blue Armco alongside of you, like, I think that was probably one of the coolest things that I've ever done. And that car by far stands out to me.
That's a 75, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
Remember that? Yeah. That's I'm wondering, I'm not sure if it was that car or not. I'm trying to remember like that. You know if that car's ever run at the Cavallino event, the racing they have before?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it has because Bobby Coates is the owner of the car.
Yeah. Okay. Same car. Yeah. That's the car I know about. Yeah. Pretty cool. You hear that thing come down the path. The track's like, it's like a F1 car. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. That's pretty cool. I love it. So I'm a certified car psychologist. I made that up, but, do whatever I want. It's my show. And so I'm going to crawl into your skull here and ask you a unique question. If you were manifest, reincarnated as a vehicle, what would you be? But more importantly, why?
My first answer was going to be a Porsche 917 because that's my favorite car, right? And then I thought about it and I was like, that's not really an honest answer. Just because it's my favorite car doesn't mean that that's
you, who you are. Yeah.
So I thought about this for hours last night.
Good. I kept you awake. You were cramming for the test today. That's good.
I was thinking about it, and I think that a old Coyote Daytona prototype Corvette would be what I would resonate with. And, the reason being is they were very quick cars, but they were dependable. They were reliable cars. They always got the job done. One of our friends had one. It was the old Spirit of Florida car. And like I said, it was just a workhorse. And I feel like, not only in racing, but in my professional life, in my personal life, like I'm always going to be there when needed, which is why, and additionally, obviously I'm American. So what's more American than a Hendrick V8 in the back, but rumbling around. But yeah, that's personally what I'm kind of following on right now.
Okay. Well, it kind of makes sense. I was watching a video where they were comparing, it was straight line speeds, the Corvette E-Ray with Ferrari F8, Lamborghini Huracan, and then the Corvette Z08. Is that be the Z08, the new kind of supercar, street car?
Yeah, it's a Z06. Yep.
Yeah.
I think they have a Z07 package for it.
Z06, that's the one. Yeah, Z07 package. And just how amazingly fast. The E-Ray was just insane. I mean, it even blew the Ferrari away, which that turbocharged Ferrari was like, oh my goodness. Now, the Ferrari might have caught it eventually, but the speeds those things are. But yeah, the old Coyote, that's interesting answer. But I kind of get that with your love for old and new and vintage and racing and, the fact you've driven Corvettes. Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad you stayed up and thought about being honest with that answer because the easy answer is what you like, but it's not who you really are. So
if you want what I like, Porsche 917, favorite car ever. I think that's probably a lot of people's answers, but
yeah, there's a couple of those up here in the Pacific Northwest, and of course you go down to Bruce Canepa's shop.
The museum when I went out to LA, and I probably stared at the Golf number 2 car for probably 2 hours. Didn't move.
Yeah, some pretty cool stuff. How about a great book that you could share with us today that you've enjoyed?
So that's another one that I was thinking about. Obviously, you can see a bunch of books here.
Yeah.
I started reading a Niki Lauda. Well, I didn't start. I finished reading a Niki Lauda book in about 2 days. And it was actually an autobiography on himself. It was called To Hell and Back. And it was one of my favorite, most engaging books that I've read to date. Reason being is it went through, obviously his distinguished, Formula One career. But in addition, like he tried to start his own airline, like it went into his personal life and back to the whole Drive to Survive conversation. Like it kind of gave you some insight into who he was outside of racing without the suit and the helmet on. And you also, it being an autobiography, saw it through his own eyes as to what it was. So I found that to be a very interesting book. And Niki Lauda, obviously, with all the Formula One championships that he had, and obviously running for Ferrari for so many years, somebody that I would look up to and I'm very interested to read about. So that was definitely a book that I liked.
Yeah, Lauda. Yeah, one of those superstars. I mean, those probably top 10, maybe even top 5 F1 drivers, of all time. And what he did and who he was and just the kind of guy that he was pretty amazing. And then, to go out and do an airline and I mean, all the different things he did in his life. So great book, great recommendation. So today I'm going to be an enabler. I'm going to enable you to go on the ultimate drive. Now, this could be the ultimate race too. So you can pick between going for a drive somewhere or racing. Any car, any place. But here's the key. If you've got a co-pilot with you, maybe it's an endurance race and you could put a seat in there, or it's a nice drive through some hillside somewhere or coast. Could be anybody in the world, even somebody who's no longer with us. So what does the ultimate drive look like or ultimate race look like for you?
So throwing in with the passenger seat, my original answer before you said that was going to be, the Le Mans Classic in 917. But honestly, I would take my father to the Targa Florio.
Okay.
And trying to think, 312 PB. Yeah, Ferrari 312 PB, Targa Florio. I think that would be, neither one of us would hear each other, obviously, but I think it's something that both of us would love. And obviously they have a bunch of vintage rallies now. And that's something that we've been talking about doing for the past couple of years. So doing that, if I could, hypothetically, that would probably be my dream scenario. And that's also close second favorite race car. So, and there's a passenger seat because they had to have. Well, technically there's a seat. I don't know if it's very comfortable, but
right. Well, insane car. Yeah, you definitely have to have. Well, you'd have helmets on anyway, but have mics in there so you could, hear each other. But I don't know if I could be a passenger in that car with somebody else driving. That'd be a little too crazy.
Yeah.
But maybe you could each jump in that thing and do laps. To Targa Florio, I mean, there you go. I mean, that would be pretty cool. And you think about some of the cars that ran that thing and some of the insane, even the old Porsches, of course, and pretty cool stuff. And
Alpha T33s and then obviously the 312s. And that was just such a cool time period. And a lot of times I'll look at old YouTube videos of, Targa Florio back in the late 60s, early 70s. And it's just insane what they would do on, for all intents and purposes, public roads. In race cars, it's just incredible. Definitely not something that's going to happen anytime soon with safety-wise. But
yeah, I had Vic Gelford before we lost him as a guest on the show, and he was a speaker at a Porsche event. I think it was a Porsche parade that I went to, and he was talking about participating in that race. And I believe it was I don't remember the year, but he had a problem with the car, and it crashed or something broke. And he was sitting out in the middle of nowhere, like waiting for someone to come and get him. And at the end of the race, they just figured, well, something happened to him. He'll come here. And so the team went off and went to have dinner. And he finally got a ride back. And he goes, where the heck is everybody? And he went to the restaurant. And he goes, what are you guys doing? You left me sitting out in the middle of nowhere. Poor thing. They're like, oh, sorry, Vic. We figured you'd find your way home. But you think about that in those days, how just raw that whole thing was. And it's pretty much unreal. But he also talked about doing test runs, and you didn't want to run too close to the curbs because there were lots of horseshoes in the curves with the nails still in them. And the horses that were still being used to pull carts and stuff would lose their shoes, and the people would brush them off to the curb. So he goes, when you go around corners, you never wanted to be too close to the edge of the road because there might be a horseshoe with nails in it. So think about that. It's crazy, huh?
Yeah. Wow. I did not. I knew that, they hit wildlife all the time, especially on test runs and whatnot, but I've never heard that. That's
pretty crazy. Well, you've taken us on a really fun ride today, Cord, and I appreciate you. Not to mention that now I got to ask this, Cord has a relationship to a tire. Is that a family name, or is that your dad having some fun with his passion for cars?
Cars, yeah. So, obviously Cord being with the Auburn, Duisburg, and Cord. And then my middle name is Bentley. So
oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was born into cars.
Well, gee whiz. Yeah, I think you were destined. Motor oil in the veins, as they say, and the DNA. Before I let you go today, could you share some parting words of inspiration for us?
Like I said before, never give up and persevere and try and take charge and be the person that makes things happen. I appreciate it for having me on the show, and this was a fantastic time.
Well, it's really fun. How can people follow you?
So I have an Instagram at Kisthardt. And then other than that, if anybody has anything coaching wise, they can reach me by email, which is gr44xjs@gmail.com.
Cool. I'll make sure I put links to these on Cord's show notes page. His last name, rather unique, Kisthardt. Say that 3 times fast. Kisthardt. Try not to think about it is what he told me at the beginning of this. Cord, you'll find him very easily. He's the only Cord here on Cars Yeah, so you can go to the Cars Yeah website, click on the search bar, and his show will pop right up in his show notes page and links to those, but he should be easy to find out there. Cord, thanks for spending some really fun time with me today, taking me on a few laps. This has been great. Until I see you again, I'll see you somewhere down a road or probably at a racetrack.
Yep, sounds good. Hopefully you come to Hershey too.
I need to get back there, yeah, and go to that swap meet. Spent a couple days in the mud looking at a lot of car parts. Long ago. I'll have to come back and join you. That'll be great. All right.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.